right, it's 6:02, 6:03. I'll call the meeting to order. We don't have quorum just yet, but we are expecting one more. So we'll just go ahead and start with the roll call in a moment. And then we do have a few things that we could take care of prior to needing to vote. So, Ms. Janess, you want to do the roll call?
Certainly will. Okay, today's 15th. Hold on, I want to give this opening. Well, our meeting is broadcast on CTN Channel 19 today. Vice Chair Carter.
Here.
Commissioner Schiff is absent. Commissioner Jackson.
Present.
Commissioner Pipkins is going to be late. Councilmember Song.
Here.
Councilmember Harrison is not here. Commissioner Offman.
Present.
Chair Tadoro Hargraves.
Here.
Commissioner Billups.
Present.
Commissioner Milgroom is out of town. We do not have a quorum.
Okay. We'll get started here. The next item on our agenda is the chair and vice chair. If some of you have been watching the council meetings or following the council agenda, you'll see that a couple weeks ago, I submitted a resignation to the commission due to some events that had come up in my personal life and was anticipating I would not have the free time to fulfill my duties on the commission. So I was stepping down, and in the effort of transitioning with Vice Chair Carter, we had a discussion and decided to make arrangements so that I could stay on in a position that would have a lot less hours per week for me to put forward so that I could stay on the commission and still manage the things in my personal life. But with that, I will be still stepping down as chair, and Vice Chair Carter and I have been working on that a lot this week and last week, along with Commissioner Offman. And I don't know if we do need to have a formal election, but we can, I think, just move on at this point until we get quorum and go from there. So that's where we're at. Last night's council meeting was already last night, right?
Yeah.
It seems like it was weeks ago, but at last night's meeting, if you do go into Legistar, you'll see both my resignation letter and the withdrawal of the resignation letter is online. So in the effort of full transparency, you can go see everything there. But that's where we are. So we do have we'll skip the approval of the agenda and the approval of the minutes, and we can go on to public forum. So does anybody from the public have any comments or anything? No. Okay. We'll continue on. For the old business, we have an update on the police chief search. So several weeks ago, Commissioner Offman and I met with City Administrator Dahoney, and we did discuss this, and he did give us some assurances that ICPOC would be fully involved in the process of finding our new police chief. So with that, he did give us some information of who would be reaching out to us from the search group and what our involvement would be. And with that, we were told that Dr. Williams would meet with ICPOC's leadership, which since this time I have spoken with him.
I have as
and
well.
Vice Chair Carter has also. We will have regular check-in meetings with Mr. Dahoney. He will support us with any questions that we would like to put forward to HR for screening, so we can start gathering those things. and we will be part of the final process. So I did ask Dr. Williams, after I spoke with him, because it was really quick conversation, if anybody in our group came up with questions, if I could email them to him, and he said yes. So I think that what I can do is send you the email with some questions on it, some things that we reviewed, and get your feedback, and if we have any additional questions, we can forward them. But my conversation, I think I got one of his very last slots to talk with him last week, so it was very quick. How was your meeting?
Yeah, I didn't get the email, the initial
that's right.
email. And so when I finally got the email, I emailed to him and said, sorry, I didn't get your email, but I'm available, and he says, well, what about today? So, so it was that same day, I believe, maybe Wednesday,
Thursday?
something
Thursday,
like that.
something like that.
That I spoke with him for probably 45 minutes.
Oh, good. That's awesome.
Oh, yeah, we just
Oh, good.
talked and
Good.
talked.
Yeah, I only had about 20 minutes.
Okay.
So, so yeah, that's great.
So it was very interesting. I don't know if I gave him what he was looking for, but I told him what I thought. So
So yeah, we're looking forward to the next steps in the process and hearing from him and his feedback on what he gathered. Obviously, he spoke to a lot of people. I know he spoke with council members and I'm guessing other groups, but it'll be good to hear what next steps are. So,
But have a little bit of follow-up on our meeting with Mr. Dahuni. Is we made it clear that in the previous search for the chief, we were left behind, and we were not part of the process. And we told him that we would like to be there from the beginning, and also would like to have specific questions coming from ICPAC to the chiefs. And I would suggest that probably by our next meeting, members of the committee, if they can think of questions, send it to either Ms. Carter or Francis about that, because those ones would be sent to HR to make sure that legally they are worded in a way that are less sensitive in terms of information, etc. Also, we told Mr. Dahuni that we should be involved as the process is going forward, that we have to be there too. And he made it clear that he would support us, and also to convey that to the rest of the committee, that he is in support of that. Also, he made it clear that it's going to be his decision to appoint the chief. So we told him, we know that. We are not going to be involved, but we would like to be there to make sure that the commission is heard. So he was very supportive of that.
yeah, that's great.
I have the worst cold. I'm so sorry.
That's awesome. So yeah, we're looking forward to that, working with him on that. And now we have quorum.
Yes,
We have quorum. So if we could go back to the approval of the agenda, if I could get a motion to move the agenda.
I make a motion to move the agenda of the March 21st, 2023 ECPAC meeting.
Great. Can I get a second?
Second.
Any changes or additions, anyone?
I would like to propose an addition.
Mm-hmm.
Under new business, I'd like to report out on the question that came up in our meeting last week with some of the citizens, and I'd like to put that after new subcommittee on policies.
Okay. Awesome,
So it's a report regarding sanctuary city.
awesome. Great. We can do that.
Okay.
Anybody else?
Did you say under new business?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yes, I see it, okay.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Awesome, that's approved. And can I get a motion to approve the minutes from our January meeting?
The only thing with the minutes I have is the report from council. There is one sentence that probably might not be pertaining to us, which is the second sentence. Says that the council discussed construction contract for the East Medical Center Drive Bridge rehabilitation and widening project. I think this is not, we're not involved in that. Probably goes to planning, whomever. Other than that, I think,
Great.
no other changes. I make motion to approve the minutes.
Motion approved. Can I get a second?
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Awesome, approved. So that takes us, we did the police chief, that takes us to new business with community outreach list.
Don't we have
Okay. Wait, what'd I
public
skip?
forum?
I did, we called public forum earlier, should we do it again?
Oh, no, that's fine, that's fine.
okay.
So, yeah, probably just now we have the quorum
Now
in case.
Are you gonna circle back?
To the vice chair, oh yeah,
Yeah.
that's, we can. So, Vice Chair Pipkins, I can bring you up to date with this, the chair and vice chair. We talked, I had originally, a couple weeks ago resigned and then withdrew my resignation, but I am stepping down as chair. So that's why we need to vote on Vice Chair Carter moving into the position of chair.
And you will be,
And we would probably be, I'll
Switch.
switch out and I'll become vice chair.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
when- I would make a motion to move to switch the positions.
Okay,
Commissioner Carter would be the chair and Francis would be the vice chair.
excellent. Can I get a second?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. So that goes, and, where am I now? So now we are at community outreach list.
Right. I think Ms. Janess sent out to everybody a list that I'm trying to put together for community organizations. And I know Commissioner Billups responded and added a couple. What we would like to do, and I think part of the communications subcommittee, would be to prepare a letter, which I'm drafting, to send out to, since this is a community commission, we want to send out and reach as many community organizations as possible. Let them know who we are, what our mission is, and that we are available to come out and speak to them, not only to introduce ourselves, but also to gather information, input, anything that they think our commission ought to be doing. And so we started that, and you have a copy of that, and I'm inviting everybody to please take a look. If you have a church group, a club, anything, that has people in it that you think might be interested in the work that we're doing, to add on in the next couple of weeks, so that we come up with a list of organizations and the contact person, if you can find it. And hopefully when we start, our new year, I know we will be losing some commissioners and hopefully getting some new. Our new year will start in June. And hopefully we can have that, a letter ready to go out and invite community input. So that's what that list was about, and please look at it and give it some thought.
Does anybody have any questions or anything? So we'll go on to the disability data. Commissioner Jackson, did you want to speak towards that?
I just had a question. So, and I apologize, I have the world's worst cold, so I'm trying very hard not to spread the germs to anybody. I think in 2009, council authorized the police or requested that the police begin collecting data on gender. That was the first time they collected, for example, traffic stop data. They didn't note gender before then. And I've been working with a bunch of disability activists, and they asked specifically if that was data that Ann Arbor PD collects. And so I'd like to ask that you all find out whether they collect that data in a few different forms. Doesn't look like they collect it on traffic stop data, so there's information from driver's licenses or indoor registrations, but doesn't look like it's a variable that AAPD collects at this time. And so I'd like to know if that is something that they collect in any form, and if that is something that this body's interested in them having to collect, such that they would ask council to ask the police to do so, like they did gender. Obviously, we're not talking about hidden disabilities, like being on the autism spectrum, but there are many physical disabilities that are noted, for example, on your car registration. And it doesn't look as if any of that is documented. And because interactions of folks with disabilities seem to have disproportionately negative outcomes with police, many activists are asking police departments around the state to begin collecting that data. And so I thought that was something that you all could determine whether this body was interested in doing. I know we haven't talked about disability data before, or at least not to my knowledge, so I thought that was important to raise that question. So it's really just a question about whether that's something that this body is interested in pursuing, and whether council might be interested in having the police collect that data. Not expecting an answer.
I'm just wondering, would it be a matter of only visible disabilities, or would it be a thing where the officer would know from the driver's license, or have to pose a question? I mean, I'm trying to figure how this data could be collected.
Yeah, no, I was not suggesting. I think we have discussed officers posing questions, and no one wants that.
Right.
So no, for example, vehicle registrations, there's noted whether that person has some disability access or not. And that is collected in some municipalities, but not in this one. So that would be an example. Not necessarily like corrected vision on your driver's license, but.
And that is, individuals with disability, they think that they are being treated differently or by the police. They have like not a positive interaction.
Right, so there's
kind of
national
thing.
data on that, but in Ann Arbor, we don't collect data on that, as far as I could tell. And that may be a direction in which council wants to go, but I imagine it would have to come from this body first, and you all would have to do some investigation about what could be collected and et cetera. But I mean, even something as simple as how many cars that are stopped are cars that have some sort of disability assigned to them.
And this would be probably easy if the information is available. It's not like
Right.
you have to ask. If it's
Right.
available, it
And
can
it's
be-
on a registration, so you
it
don't have
can-
to ask.
It can be added, and that can be used later on for analysis and all that stuff.
Mhm.
So, okay.
Yeah. Because they ask your driver's license and registration, and it's on vehicle registration, so
Correct.
that one's easy peasy.
What if the disabled person is not driving the car? If the car is registered to somebody else?
Yeah.
Just seems more difficult than what we had talked about before.
Yeah, I don't think the question is, so just as the question is the race of the person driving the car,
Yeah.
it's the perceived race of the person driving the car,
Right.
that how many cars with any kind of disability, and I'm only talking traffic stops, but understand that this could be collected in other kinds of data. So when police have interactions with people, when those things come up, obviously you are a disabilities expert, and you work in this world. So I think the national data are clear that certainly if you consider mental health conditions a disability, and many people do, that's a disproportionate number of police interactions. But even in terms of just traffic stop data, lots of municipalities are already collecting that data from registration, irrespective of who the driver is, just how many cars stopped have that designation, and some are looking towards doing that. But when I was approached, could not answer the question, so I thought I'd bring it up to you guys. But that's all. It is just a question to ponder.
Does anybody have any other comments about that or questions? Okay.
I think if we, start and see what AAPD does
Mm-hmm.
do, then that gives us the opportunity to see if we want to
Yep.
move forward with something.
Yep.
But see if there's any of that data that's collected, especially if it's simple enough and already included in some kind of traffic stop information. But we're thinking that it's not, correct, Commissioner Jackson?
I'm sorry. Yes, I think it's not.
Do you think it's not?
Sorry.
Okay. But seeing how easy it would be
Mhm.
to collect that kind of data,
Right.
since it sounds like it's a simple thing to
Mhm.
do.
Yeah, and it's not
Yeah.
intrusive.
Right, right.
Okay. So that brings us to a discussion on pretextual stops on the agenda, and I know this is something Council Member Harrison would like to talk about. And I think that this is probably the first time we've had something that a council member has brought to us. So this is a new process. I'm not sure if I'm doing it right or wrong or not. I'm just winging it. So I think this is the best way to do it. So.
Yeah, and feel free to jump in here.
Mhm.
I just, pretextual stops
Mhm.
is, it's problematic at best, I think. I don't think that, it necessarily does not create public
Mhm.
safety. And I think it's something, it's actually something that I would like to do something about. I would like for our police department not to do it anymore. I mean,
I know
just generally speaking.
recently I was going through our past minutes for something else and came across that we did actually talk about the Philadelphia changes that were made in October of 2001 at one of our meetings. And this was the city of Philadelphia passing, I believe it was an ordinance or an amendment to an ordinance where you could no longer be pulled over for what they referred to as a secondary offense. You could only get a ticket for a secondary offense if you were pulled over for a primary offense. So you would have to run a red light in order to get a ticket for a broken tail light or having a brake light out or having fuzzy dice hanging in your rear view mirror, things like that. And I remembered learning about that because I saw the council member on CNN one morning and he described it and it sounded like it made sense. And it was just that idea of, or the question being raised of, why do we pull people over still for a broken tail light? Is that something really that we need to focus on in a day of texting and driving? The other thing was broken, or, when you have a brake light bar and lights are out on that. I learned to drive at a time where we didn't even have those brake lights in the back window. So there's, I think, a lot of discussion out there of how we could do this. I mean, if I drive through a toll booth in Pennsylvania without paying, they send me my bill. So is there a way that if we do see someone with a broken tail light or something else out, that we can take a picture and send them a warning? Is it really necessary to pull people over anymore?
Or send them a ticket.
Yeah,
I mean, if
exactly.
it's something that, you know, they have to
Mhm.
get fixed, there's no light over the license plate or whatever, and take a picture of it and put a ticket in the mail. I mean,
Mhm.
there's no need to necessarily pull the car over.
Mhm.
Or if you
well,
don't have,
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, Commissioner
Go ahead.
Jackson.
So Ann Arbor doesn't have cameras though like that. And there has been considerable opposition to having them in the city.
Right.
And in places where that happens, those cameras are traffic cameras for that purpose. And so we don't have that.
What
The
about
driving equity law in Philadelphia has a very specific list that Chair Tadora Hargraves and I have talked about at length. And obviously, I had conversations with the chief about things on that list that might be feasible for Ann Arbor. The Human Rights Commission has also had those conversations. And so there are some kinds of things that are not necessarily considered safety issues, such as when you have the 3 brake lights, if one of the 3 is out, can people still tell you're braking? If one headlight is out but you have parking lights on the side, can people still see that you're an oncoming car? And even something like tinted windows, which are very controversial here. Chief Cox pointed out that in Florida, Arizona, and parts of California, they're quite standard, and police are, do their jobs fine with tinted windows. I'm so sorry.
The officers have cameras in their
That's
cars.
what I was thinking.
Right, but then you come to, right, so you could use dash cams as long as you felt like dash cams were always reliable, and you'd have to feel that dash cams were always reliable to do that. But there are times when people aren't driving behind the driver, for example, and so.
Yeah, but it would be the same thing. If I'm gonna stop somebody for a violation, then I see the violation. And whether or not the camera is reliable seems to me would be an issue. I get a ticket and I say, no, that's not right. Then I get to go to court and fight the ticket.
So I'd go back to the timing of that. And so you know that dash cam video is not held for forever. And so without a complaint, it's not held very long. And so you'd have to change the rules about how long that footage is held such that you could go all the way through, a ticketing process and a court process. In places where there's cameras, often
Sure.
they mail you a link to it. But then that means money for the police department because storage of the footage is why it isn't stored very long.
But you only have to store it if you write the ticket. If I write the ticket for somebody, whatever, brake light out, whatever, and I take a picture, that's all that has to be saved. I don't have to save the footage for the whole.
Well, now you have to find someone to clip that footage, just that footage.
They can do that.
I don't think you're unreasonable. I'm just, what am I doing? I'm just raising some of the concerns that you might hear in the future. That's
sure.
all.
I'm
And
sure.
I think storage of it is the big one. In places where they have traffic cameras, a lot of times they send you the link to it, so you see yourself, and you could use that yourself. But here, we don't have that technology. It costs money to save it. I'm not opposed. I think it's fantastic. But in Philadelphia, I would like to point out, they do not ticket people for those things. They do not mail them
Right.
tickets later.
That's
They
not-
just do not consider them
They
as
just don't.
That's an
offensive.
equity that can create an equity. I'm
Yeah.
just concerned about.
Yeah, I think
Right.
over here also, if you are parked in, like a meter is expired or something like that, they would give you a ticket, and also they will take a picture of the plate. So, and the time.
It's
So
timestamped.
those things are there. And you're right, saving a picture is probably takes less room or space than saving a video.
I just want to be able to share community resources and that. So like if you have a light that's out or you need like some repair in your car and you don't have the means to, you haven't been able to take time off of work to get it done. I know the county has organized free services, right? So that folks can get that work done. So I mean, hopefully we can differentiate between like what is actually a crime or an offense versus folks who need assistance and shouldn't have to, I don't know, be criminalized for needing help.
Needing help or having an older vehicle or,
Right.
Can I say that I think that some of the reasons that people are up in arms about and wanting these ordinances changed or this to be addressed is because the disproportionate use of those kind of stops to pull people over and find other reasons
Right.
to then arrest them or do some other things. Not that it's proven in Ann Arbor that that's the case, but that is the reason for getting rid of some of these antiquated reasons to stop people, because a lot of times they're used to try to find something else on someone.
I'd add two things. The Human Rights Commission was looking at this, and they were looking at it in terms of cost, how much it costs people, disproportionately lower income people and people of color. But also, remember that when the prosecutor, shortly after he took office, one of the first moves was to say that we're not going to use data from pretextual stops in these ways. And I think they may have come up with a list.
They have a policy.
And-
They have a pretextual stop policy.
Right,
Yeah,
and
they've
so
been developed.
they actually might have a list of some of the things that they were specifically thinking about as well, and so that might be a resource.
Yeah.
On one of the ride-alongs I did with a Pittsfield Township officer, he pointed out about 100 things that he could stop a car for in about 4 minutes. And so he was saying, I can pull over anybody at any time, I can list all of these things, and he would list them by the the code. And, it was very clear that, he understood how to do that. The second thing I would say is that Chief Shaheen in Dearborn is also an Ann Arbor resident, not obviously, but he's an Ann Arbor resident. And this is a thing that he's been very interested in Dearborn, and has said that if you pull over 100 cars and you find a gun, most people feel excited. We've gotten a gun off the street. But you have also alienated 99 citizens who were not doing anything wrong. And he is very forthcoming, very willing to talk. I work with him in another group, and he has been very forthcoming about things that they looked at and decided to change. So he might be a
That's
resource
good
as
to know.
well.
I'd like to, connect with him.
So if I can just ask Councilperson Harrison, are you proposing a particular method of reducing pretextual stops?
An ordinance, and, yes, we've got a list. Is that what you're, yes.
Yeah, I mean,
I
is
have
it-
the attorney here with me.
Okay.
Yes, to answer your question, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And did you want me to list? I'm looking at both
If
you
you'd
guys.
like to,
some-
if you would like to, I'll leave it up to you, how much, because I
some of that.
understand the ordinance is, not out there yet because it hasn't been presented at a council meeting or anything, so.
So, there's 8 categories of violations, and it's cracked, chipped windshield, loud exhaust, tinted windows, reflective film, objects hanging from the rearview mirror, cracked tail lamp, registered plate lighting violations, and then registration plate violations regarding plate height, attachment, legibility, and partial obstruction as described in MCL. ... So that's
So they would not be
so those,
stopped.
correct, as a as a reason.
Reason
Those
for-
8
Right.
violations or 8, they could not be stopped for that. They would have to be stopped for a primary reason. Yeah.
Can I say that I've been a resident of this community since I was 8 years old, and since I've been driving 16. Those things you just listed, I've been stopped by Ann Arbor, the county, and state police numerous times for some of those violations, or what was perceived as violations. Car checked, talked to, and then, okay, we're not going to write your ticket. Bye.
So as a fishing
Wow.
expedition.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's,
So,
I'm not from Michigan, I wasn't raised here, so policing was different where I come from, but the idea that we have a community where our population almost doubles every single day during the day, we have these sporting teams that are kind of good, so a lot of people come to their events. We have numerous other events year-round that are nationally known and nationally recognized. We have a school system that is impressive to others to come through school of choice, so children from outside the district come here. And we have one of the best hospital systems in the country. So we get a lot of people in our community from outside of our community too. And that's not even, the number of people that work here. We often talk about the disparity in housing. So we have a lot of people who travel in from other areas where they can afford their housing, whether it be IPSI or other communities, and travel here to work. And so I would like everyone to feel that they are welcome here. And I couldn't imagine coming here, you wait 6 months to get your child or your mother or your loved one an appointment at this awesome medical facility, and then you have to worry about whether or not you're going to get pulled over on the way to the appointment and miss the appointment. It just don't, for those 8 things, it just doesn't make any sense to me.
And that's, just having a discussion before I came here, when you're looking at the black and brown population, here in the city of Ann Arbor, the percentage, in terms of residents is low. However, who's working at all the facilities that, we enjoy, that we here as residents, that we, the restaurants that, who it largely is traveling in and out of this town. Like you said, I didn't even think about like the doctor's appointments, but, so yeah, these are the individuals, in addition to our residents that I'm thinking about, and who often, there's, like we talked about, they may have loud exhaust because they, affordability in terms of they may have an older vehicle. I'm concerned about. I want these individuals to feel safe when they come here, when they go home. They have a family to go home to.
Yep.
And so that's what I'm thinking about.
You have sometimes cars make a little bit noise and shit, but this is minuscule compared to motorcycles.
Yeah.
So motorcycle makes more noise, yet they go through because it's the nature of the vehicle itself.
And I also want to, correct me if I'm wrong, but I am going to share that a question was asked of a staff member. I think the question was, has Ann Arbor had a Tyree Nichols? And, I actually said probably a better example was Philandro Castile. The answer was no, but Philandro Castile was stopped for a broken tail light, right? He did not make it home to his family. So, we think about that, and it's like, oh, that hasn't happened here. Well, number one, I never wanted to, not once. But then really what I think about is, when you're thinking about, okay, how individuals that have been part of a fishing expedition, what is called a fishing expedition, what Bonnie just talked about, Commissioner just talked about, are the individuals that, let's say they had an old warrant, they didn't even know they had, right? That may have spent 24 hours, up to 24 hours in lockup, just even a day. Those individuals that have a job where they're working and it's a no call, no show, right? And they were terminated because they didn't show up to work. What did that do? How did that affect their lives, right? Like, I'm just talking even a day, but let's say you're in there a few days, or, let's say something has been a year in there, 3 months, whatever. These are affecting individuals' lives, their livelihood, families, and so we haven't had a Tyree Nichols or a Philandro Castillo, never want one, but we have a whole lot of individuals, hundreds, that have been affected in that way, where they didn't make it to work and they were terminated because they were no call.
The person who introduced this bill, though, talked about being stopped and pulled over, and he didn't miss work. But he was humiliated.
Well, and at the,
And-
and even at that,
Yeah.
lower than that, right, it's just the humiliation, right? The-
Absolutely.
The fear, the level, the
Yep.
rise in your blood pressure.
Yep.
When you are a black, brown individual and you've got a car behind you,
Yeah.
no, you don't have a warrant. But like,
Right.
just, yes, the humiliation and the fear, what does that do to your health?
Yeah.
When your heart is racing,
Right.
and like that, I mean,
Yeah.
that's, does not need, in my opinion, need to continue.
There's a law enforcement person who talked about he felt like it was the way he happened to glance. He was a law enforcement person himself of color, and he was off duty, and he thought it was the way he glanced at the police officer that made him pull him over. And he had all of that anxiety. And I think that those things are things that don't get measured. So if we're only counting when people get murdered, I think we're missing the point.
We're
If we're
totally
only
missing.
counting
Like, what
when
did
people
you,
miss
what
work.
did, how did you feel
Yeah.
when
Oh,
these?
yeah, yeah.
I mean, you're you know, you're,
Humiliated. I mean, you
Humiliated,
have to
you're
open
like-
up your
You
car.
worry that your
have to-
neighbors are driving past you, your employer is driving past you and sees you with your hands on your car, etc.
Right.
This is a small town. Should that
Right.
happen here,
Absolutely.
everybody knows somebody's going to
Yep.
tell somebody
Yep.
else. So.
So, this is a racial equity issue. It's a human rights issue. It's not something that I think, I think we probably, I don't want to speak for anyone else. I don't think I don't think it needs to, we need to continue this. I don't think our police department needs to continue this practice.
So is that something that you are asking IGPOC to support, or are we gonna wait until it's introduced, and what's?
So here's the, so yes, I'm asking for ICPAC to support, like, is the United here? Yes. Yes. So yes, to answer your question, yes.
Do you have a timeline of when you're introducing the first reading and the second reading?
Likely, yes. It
Okay.
is likely, actually in 2 weeks.
Because
April
I think
3rd.
we should read it and then
Mhm.
take a vote on
Yeah,
it,
you
hopefully
can-
at the April meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you can have it for us.
Yeah, yes, I will. We're still, it's not complete yet.
Mhm, sure.
Mhm.
But yes,
Good.
I could present that
So,
to you guys, yeah.
I think that this is great. I think that this is timely. It's finally having this conversation, and it's very exciting that in this community we can have this conversation and get the voices heard, and especially because it is coming as a ordinance, and you have the 2 readings. Now we have time for people to participate,
Yeah.
right? Want lots of participation. If we have 100,000 people living here and 50 to 100,000 people coming in to go to work or go to the hospital or go to school, that means we should have 1,000 emails at least, not more, lots more.
Yeah.
There are people who are coming into work, and to get their viewpoints and for everybody to give them the opportunity to be heard. And I think I recently was asked, how do you see a way to change police? And one of the answers I said was change the laws. If we don't want police officers doing this, don't wait for police discretion or ask the police chief to tell them not to. We had a former police chief who said that to me once. He said, if you don't want us to pull anybody over, just let us know and we'll stop. Well, he's not even here anymore, so what happens then?
Yeah.
So, this is the best way to do it, to really make people too, when they are coming in here, to know it is a law. They're not going to pull me over. I don't have to take a gamble for who's on duty and who's not on duty. So this is really exciting.
I have a question, because we talk so much about the ordinances and the laws that a lot of people are not aware of. And so they get pulled up. For example, I was recently at the laundromat not too long ago. It was Pittsfield police, so I was like, okay. But they, I guess, pulled them over in the laundromat parking lot, and it went from, they don't even know why they got pulled over. But next thing I know, they were looking in their car. The lady said they hit their car next to them. So it just turned into a huge situation. But as I'm talking to the attendant, I'm like, they can't do that. Do they know they shouldn't be able to do that? But it's like people don't know their rights or what, the police are allowed or not allowed to do. So in reference to once the ordinance gets passed, how do you make it known to the community if this is out there.
So I don't know what this looks like, but I would love to, like, promote. I don't know if we come up with, a flyer that's easily, we can pass along electronically, just make it just really short, straight and to the point. Something like, that's what I'm thinking about, right? Like, I want to say campaign, but like, I feel like a campaign essentially to promote
educate.
this, to educate, yes.
So like how we do for the tenants and like the Renters
Yeah.
Commission, when there's new updates on like know your rights for tenants, how do you navigate the eviction courts? We require landlords to have this information readily available. So we should probably require the police to have this available.
Right.
I'm sure we could work across commissions.
Yeah.
With Human Rights Commission, and city staff and departments, and just
Yeah.
make sure
So
folks are aware.
drivers know
I
their
expect
rights.
you to be on WEMU and Michigan
Oh,
Radio. And
everywhere. I'm working on the media junket. Yeah, definitely. I really want lots of folks to know. I want to really get the word out. WEMU,
Good.
and I plan on writing a press release even to the news, the local, ABC, W, DIB, and all. I don't know who will actually want to take the story, but like I plan on.
they'll want to take the story.
Yeah, I would. Yeah, I think it's a big deal. It's important. Like
It is.
Why aren't we doing this?
It is.
But also, you're the big deal, Cynthia. So I just want to point out how, like, for Cynthia to bring this to this body and then later to city council, but to work with city staff, with legal, when you campaign, I told folks, we haven't had a black representative in city council in 15 years. That's a whole child. My children are 12 and 17. That's a whole child, right? Like, they spent
a whole child.
the entirety of their lives here in Ann Arbor without knowing what a black city council rep is. And you spent generations in this city waiting for things to happen, but you said, "Oh, it's me.
Yeah.
I'm going to make this happen." So when I said I was going to cry, this is the difference of what it means to have to elect someone who wants to see this change happen for family, for community, and for people coming into town. But this is lasting change.
And this is personal. This is personal for me.
And this is why representation is important everywhere,
Yes.
everywhere.
Yes.
And we're
absolutely.
glad to have you.
Yeah. Thank you.
on city
Thank
council.
you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
and no one is going to question your experience. It's not like somebody wrote about you, not knowing you exactly, but it's you, and this is your experience. Plus, what you are proposing is within the vision or the mission of ICPAC, to improve the
Yep.
relationship,
Yes.
to promote a positive interaction,
Yeah.
to have people trust.
Trusting. Yes.
So these things are part of that. Plus, you're not trying to nullify any major crimes and not pursue those ones. But they're given the number of police officers in town and the things that they have to deal with. If those issues constitute part of their duties, so they can focus on something else.
Absolutely. And so the argument is it does create public safety because let's take this off of their plate and they can focus on crime.
We were just talking, we met today, and as a matter of the numbers of police officers are down,
Right.
and so that they can't do things like community policing and this kind of thing, so.
So yeah, let's
you-
take
you
that
frame
away.
up.
Yeah, take it off of their plate.
Good, good.
Yeah.
They may say, oh, well, we're, like I said, the former police chief saying, oh, well, we won't do it anyway. Well, it doesn't matter if it's not getting done today or tomorrow. Let's just make sure it happens.
Yep. Yep, absolutely.
And I'm sure it's gonna be a lively discussion.
It
So,
will be.
And so
What, on city council?
So I definitely admire and respect your courage to be the one to bring this forward, because it's definitely gonna be,
Yeah, yeah.
you're putting yourself out there,
Yeah.
but you're owning it, which I admire.
Thank you. Thank you.
They've got your back.
Thank you guys. I appreciate
Yeah.
you guys. It's why it really is why I'm here. It's
Mhm.
why it is just, this is something I'm so passionate
Mhm.
about. Because I myself am, I'm still to this day, kind of suffering consequences or ramifications of those types of practices on loved ones.
And-
It's affected me.
And passion is long-term, even if at a low rate, versus emotions where they come and
Yeah.
go. But I think to be dedicated to that speaks highly of your input and your forward thinking about, you can make a change.
Now you guys are gonna make me cry. It's like turning into love fest. I appreciate you
Well,
guys.
Ann Arbor will be the first one to do this, right, Cynthia? The first in the
Yes.
state.
Yes.
All right.
Are we right about that? Do we think?
First in the state by workmanship.
You know, we're Ann Arbor.
That's right.
What have done the leaders and the best.
Leaders
like,
and best.
Leaders and
Hey,
best.
the best town to live in, and the whole country,
Yeah.
Or at least the county.
No, the country, the country.
Country would be great, but let's get the county.
Yeah.
Oh
You know, maybe when it comes up, it may help if we show up
I would
for
please.
the
Yes.
on whatever day. Let us know
Yes.
whatever day it's
Yeah.
going to be.
Yeah, right. We were just chatting about that.
I guess I'll be there anyway.
Please, and also, you know, if you know, like your story, I mean, like I want stakeholders in the room. I really want to. I've told someone I want to fill the chambers. I mean, I've reached out to, A Nation Outside. We actually just started Nation Outside just started a chapter just recently here in Washtenaw County. So the individuals, this is an organization of individuals that have been impacted by the criminal legal system. Most of them, I don't think anybody lives here in Ann Arbor, so they'll be traveling in, so I'm, hoping that date lines up with, Edie and I are, we met a couple weeks ago and we're meeting again, but yeah, I want people
Right.
to hear the stories of how this has impacted lives and how you felt, when you, the humiliating, right? Like how you felt, and so yeah, this is big, I think.
Good.
So.
Good.
Did you want to add anything? Okay.
So for those who don't know me, I'm Jen Janetsky. I'm the new city prosecutor, and I've been working with the great privilege of working with Councilmember Harrison on many things, not just this.
Yeah.
She's got
This is just a
a
start.
line of ideas
Start.
that we'll be working on
Yeah.
for quite some time. But the only thing I would add is that this is really much farther along than Councilmember Harrison is willing to admit. There's a lot of work that's gone into this. It's nearly fully drafted, and I do think we can hit our
Okay.
anticipated timeline that we'd like to get it on for first reading by April 3rd. So that's what we're gunning for.
Same.
awesome.
We're working hard on it, and I just love Jen. I'm so excited about her. Oh my God, we just I didn't know. It's like, what's the prosecutor?
We're gonna have to bring like cake and tissues. It's gonna be amazing. Also, a lot of crying.
Yeah, this is like, I just want to thank you. I mean, she's like, I think a couple of you have heard me talk about,
It's been my
Mr.
great
Janetsky.
privilege.
Yeah.
I mean, it is my job,
Well.
but it has been my great privilege.
I mean, I feel very blessed and fortunate right now.
Absolutely.
I'm wondering if it's coming before council, you think, for first reading April 3rd?
That's the
Yeah,
date we
that's the
we
targeted
are
date.
hoping for.
So
yes.
what I think maybe we should do, since we haven't seen it,
Right.
is to, okay, let me propose a motion. Because it seems to me that if we go in front of council and say, ICPOC supports the idea, but we haven't decided that
So-
we support the idea.
Yeah, you need to see it.
So,
Yeah.
we need to see it.
Yes.
But, I guess I would like to know whether we support the idea of having a list of minor offenses for which the police will not make traffic stops. And so we haven't voted yet, but it's coming up. I want council to know that
When it-
ICPOC supports it.
I have a question. When, because you have, ordinance has 2 readings.
Correct.
And a public hearing.
Mhm.
Is the public hearing with the first reading or the second reading?
That's what I
Second
understood.
reading.
It's the second reading,
Second.
okay. And is there a skipped meeting
That's what we
in
were just
between the
talking.
first meeting and the second reading?
Councilmember Song.
I don't,
This is-
I think it comes right up after the following meeting.
I think they
So-
back to back, too.
Right after,
Okay,
yeah.
so then,
Is it possible to make it like if we want it a month later, if we wanted to skip, is it possible to do
Oh,
that?
to delay the public hearing?
Will you be bumping up against budget stuff?
Well, I mean,
Just May.
Well, we can talk about it procedurally.
okay.
okay.
And just the reason I'm asking is, if they are meeting the meeting, then we wouldn't have a meeting in time.
Right.
But
Right.
if it goes from, if the second reading and public hearing is in the first meeting of
May, this is what we talked about.
then we would be able to have our meeting where we
April.
could have a full discussion
Right.
on the actual ordinance and vote, and then also appear at public hearing.
That's what I was hoping for.
Mhm.
Okay.
So it may be that we adjust the target to allow for that, if it has to be in rapid succession, but we'll
I see.
check into all
Okay.
that so that we have
Okay.
the procedure.
Yeah.
Commissioner Jackson?
I would hate for that to be delayed
Yeah.
so that we could do a reading and express our support, although I think we should do our reading before we express a formal support. But I think probably people are familiar with the people on the commission, and their presence at the second reading would be also significant, and certainly council would understand what that meant as well. And so I think in the way that it takes ordinances to move and the discussion that will happen in between the 2 readings, I would hate for it to be delayed just because of our meeting.
Right.
When I think there are other ways that we could show support of the ordinance.
Yeah.
So I just think there are options, and I don't think the only option is to delay because of us. So I just wanted to suggest that.
People can come multiple times, come for the first read. I mean, this is what folks do for everything we do. I mean, like that bridge, which is not going to be in the minutes again, but I mean, they came every chance they got to speak about this bridge. At the first, when we introduced the resolution, when it went back to staff, when it was like every single time folks came and gave public comments, so.
Right.
You
I
can speak
thought
to ad
public
nauseam about
comment
this.
could happen at the first. Does it not, it doesn't?
Yeah, if it's on the agenda,
It's on the
if it's on the
agenda,
agenda, yeah, right.
But do you mean,
Yeah.
there's a difference between you guys having a public hearing and a
Yeah.
public
Right,
comment?
Right, public, yeah,
Right.
gotcha, gotcha.
It's like a
Yeah.
twofer, right? So you come in because it's on the agenda, and you
Right.
can give your public comments.
Right.
And then when it comes up again on the agenda for the public hearing, then you come back up and speak again. But it's like the same people who first gave their comments at the beginning of the meeting, and it's like we pretend like, oh, you again. What a surprise. But, it's just the timing of this. And then council debates. Like, we listen to the public speak at the public hearing, and then we debate the merits of the ordinance changes, and then we vote. So we vote at the public hearing after the second reading. So because
Okay.
it's to give folks time to understand and get the word out that there's this major ordinance that's being put out. And then, you do your introduction, like why you want to have this ordinance in the first place. And folks who are co-sponsors of this will also speak to why it's important. To other commissions might be able to speak up. So maybe Human Rights Commission can come and say, like, this is also important to us.
Right.
And then for the second meeting of the month, it comes back on the agenda. And again, people will come and give public comments at the beginning of the meeting. They're like, it's on the agenda. We're still excited.
Yeah.
And we still want you to do the right thing, council members. And then it gets to the public hearing where, like, staff members might do an introduction and say,
Right.
like, this is what it means in practice, and this is how we would actually implement this. And then we actually vote, and it goes into effect.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that's where you would do, and I think she may have a vacation, there may be a vacation.
I have a
There's a-
family issue
Okay, so
on
this is-
April 7th that
So-
I have to attend to, but other than that, I have no vacation until
Well,
June.
I should say, I guess I should say time off is
Yes.
really what I was
Yes.
just trying to be.
Yeah.
So I'm
I
trying to
appreciate,
be
I know you were trying to
respectful of.
protect my issue.
Yeah, right, yeah, so.
And you have unlimited opportunities to contact council members, and people
Exactly.
take
Right.
full advantage of that.
Yeah.
Like, you don't have
Absolutely.
to wait until public comments or hearings. You can email us all day, all night, to tell us to do the right thing.
No,
Yes.
no, I am probably ignorant of the ordinance resolution. Is the ordinance being like sponsored by more than one council member, or it comes from one council member, or how?
You have to have two, at minimum two,
Minimum of
and
two.
then 3 if it's late on the agenda.
So you have another person with
Yeah.
you?
I mean,
Yeah.
I would hope it's.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm not,
Right over there, yeah.
I'm not for it.
Yes.
I just want to make sure,
Yes,
things
yes.
are going to stand.
Yes.
Because if there are two council members who are going to be sponsoring the ordinance, that would make it a bit easier for us to either vote on or have the understanding of the ordinance. And next time, even if it's going to come late, we are like on board.
Yeah.
Because maybe we can also get a reminder, if once we know it's going to be on
Right.
on
Which-
the agenda, maybe if Ms. Janess would just send us out an email, so we
Yeah.
know it's
Okay.
it's coming up.
Yeah, once it's on Legistar,
Yeah.
Yeah,
the link
exactly.
to send it, yeah.
Yep.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
It's gonna be
much.
so good, Cynthia.
Exciting.
Thanyour you.
Thank you guys for your
Kevin, did
support.
you have a question, Dr.
Well,
Carpio?
just, I wanted to kind of circle back to the analysis I'm doing. I think we'll support a lot of this. I know we had talked about slowing down the release so we could talk with the police, but I wonder if this ordinance would be strengthened if some of the findings from that report could be included in it. Because a lot of what the concerns here are being voiced, I think, that will be able to support those claims. So I don't know how that timing works, because we talked about not kind of dropping a bomb on the police without first kind of talking through them and meeting, but this would be going faster than maybe we thought.
Right, and I think we
Yeah.
still have to respect the courtesy of your work and the process, and it
I mean,
needs to be
I think on our
transparent,
part,
and
we're-
people need to, I think all of us need to see it prior to its release and so on, due to how that all went down, so I think that's a discussion that we can continue at another time
Right.
and really look at it all together.
I think the need, and then the work that you already put in with legal gets us to where we need to
Yeah.
be to
Mhm.
actually put it out.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
And
Yeah.
I mean, I'll just say this, and I mean, I say this all the time, I'm nobody, I'm just somebody off the street, but I mean, I feel like society as a whole is ready for this. Not just here in Ann Arbor, but across the nation, this is really a topic that has been discussed, and I think it's just time, I think.
Absolutely.
It's time.
And these
And-
are antiquated. I mean, I
Exactly,
think
yes,
they're
yes,
really
absolutely.
antiquated, and the origin of,
Yeah.
of these laws and why they were.
Mhm. I think
created in
Commissioner
the first
Jackson made a
place.
good point too, when you think of how long these laws have been enacted, and now cars have these secondary lights. It used to be you had one headlight, one, and when it went out, it went out. But now you have all these side lamps and this and that, so if one's out, your car's still lit up. So it really is, like you're saying, it's antiquated. Our technology has surpassed its need.
Why
Mhm.
are we still operating with these antiquated laws that are affecting, quite frankly,
People's lives.
thousands of lives,
I think,
destroying people's lives?
I think it'd be important to frame this as the ordinance being important as a single tool in the arsenal.
Mhm.
this isn't gonna stop pretextual stops, obviously, right? There's, what, if we take off 8, there's 92 other ways to get
Well,
stopped.
yeah.
It also, Philadelphia has shown that it didn't reduce disparities, and that's a problem. So I don't think it should be framed as part of the solution for reducing disparities, but the ordinance is a good one because it's a good one. It does not have to solve problems to be a good ordinance, right?
It does start.
And so-
Like a start.
And so it won't reduce disparities that obviously exist.
Right.
This ordinance in Philadelphia was preceded by a traffic stop study, though. And so they relied on the traffic stop data to suggest why it was necessary to do this. And so then a year after it having been in effect, they did some analysis and they showed that it reduced traffic stops by 54%. So I sent you the citation.
Oh, thank you.
54% down, but didn't reduce disparities in stops at all. Didn't reduce disparities in effects. So I don't want that to be a little gotcha next year. So it shouldn't be, so it shouldn't be framed as this is a solution to disparities, but rather this is important because it hurts lots of people, it's
Right.
problematic
We are
for
calling
lots
it
of
out,
people.
and we're calling it out. It's not going to be the solution, but we definitely are calling it out.
And it's a step in the direction
Yeah.
of chipping away at ways in which people get discriminated against.
Right, right.
And then that way, it will stand on its own merits and it will be fine no matter what happens if data get analyzed in 5 years.
Right, right.
So it's important because it's important.
Yeah, of course.
It's not designed to
It's a
solve.
start. It's really a start. You know, it's a start. We have to start
start
somewhere.
somewhere.
It's a good place to
Yeah.
start.
This conversation.
Yeah.
And also it's important because it deals with lives, with people. You know, if you have 10 people are going to be affected, now you drop it to 7. Well, you saved 3. Are we going to say the 3 is not enough? But it's better than
Right.
being 10.
Right. It's their lives, but it's generational. This
Yeah.
is generational. It affects both children, parents. It's
And
lots of lives.
And I think sometimes in science we try to focus on one factor and we really ignore the others, but they all work together. Poverty is something that is affecting everything. It affects the health, education, where people live, how much they make, do they have enough to sustain themselves?
Right.
We are really
Social
tapping on
determinants.
just very little things. But
Yeah.
you know, if you have a faucet that drips one drop at a time, it might not make a difference later on, but if you have a bucket underneath it and you come next day and it's full.
Yeah.
So even we should not minimize small impacts. Over time, we'll
100%.
have really
Yes.
a better return. So I think
Yeah.
we should not to pursue things that we feel they are not 100%. There is no 100%.
Right. Right.
There is no 90%. You go to the doctor and the doctor says, you know what, I'm going to give you this medication. It's good for 80%, but
Right.
you have 20% of side effects. And side effects would be really hard.
Right.
But I'm taking the 80%.
Yes.
So I think no matter the impact is, it should not be calculated as percentage or level. So we are dealing with human lives.
Yes.
And I think every life is important.
Yeah, and that's exactly what this is about, dealing with human lives, definitely.
Wonderful. This is awesome. There's something to look forward to.
That's right.
Yay.
I know, right?
So that's great. So that was an excellent discussion. Thank you, everybody, for being here and being part of it. The next item is our new subcommittee on policies.
So, we're going to try something new, starting the next meeting. Chair Todoro had come up with some new subcommittees, I think at our last meeting or the meeting before. So we're really going to push to implement working subcommittees. And I'm going to be contacting all the commissioners that we have. And we're going to have to work double duty, some of us, because we're down bodies right now. And so I'm going to ask that all the subcommittees report every month. One of the things that I'm looking at, we're way behind on our review of complaints. And as I understand it, part of that is due to, and I'm sort of diverging away a little bit. Part of that is due to the fact that there's some kind of a format that we don't have that we need.
Of a document.
And, right, to really do what we need to do with these complaints. I would like us to get up to date. If a complaint comes in 2023, we ought to look at it when it comes in, because we're a couple years behind. So one of the things that Vice Chair is going to be working on is getting that platform set up so that we can hit the ground running. One of the other things that I'm concerned about, and I have expressed this before, I don't think each complaint needs to be looked at by 3 different commissioners. I think that that's excess work that we don't need. So I know that I haven't spoken to Commissioner Hoffman about it, but he is so good at reviewing these complaints. And I'm hoping that he will chair the subcommittee with regard to the information managers. And no more than 2 people. If Commissioner Pipkins is looking at a complaint and you think there's something there, then you can refer it to someone else. Look at this, review this for me. This is what I think. But for 3 people to look at the same complaint, to me, it just doesn't make any sense. So that's one of the things that we're going to try to speed up. If we can get this, whatever it is, Francis, you know what we need.
Yep.
If we can get that going so that we can get these complaints turned over. So that's one thing that we're going to be doing. The subcommittee on policies. Now, a couple of months ago, Commissioner Milgram and myself said we were going to work on the policies, but we were talking about looking at police policies and trying to see if we wanted to suggest any new policies, changes to current policies and so forth. So I'm going to ask him to chair that. But in terms of policies for our commission, Vice Chair is going to be working on those. And there's a list that she's already started in terms of the way that we're going to do things. Now, here's one. And I know I'm old, and I accept that. So I did a memo, and I did it on paper, right? And I've asked Ms. Janess to file it. I mean, it's one thing to have things on phones and on computers and stuff like that. But when we're dead and gone, somebody ought to be able to look in a file and pull out a piece of paper. So I know what's happening. I understand.
A scan of your paper, Stephanie.
But it has
Maybe
happened.
you could scan it.
It has happened in this commission where there's a document somewhere on somebody's phone that is not accessible to everybody else on the commission. And I think to be completely transparent, I mean, you can keep it on your phone, you can keep it on your watch, you can keep it any way you want to, but we ought to have a copy in the file. So.
But you could email her that.
Look, I handed it to her just like this. And I have another copy if anybody wants to look at this. But so,
What you're saying is we need an archive of
Thank you.
information.
Okay.
So part of that archive can be
Electronic.
in the digital, in
Right.
the electrical,
Yep.
in that domain. So we just
Fine.
need to make sure we have that set up.
okay.
Yeah.
And you don't want your piece of paper
And
lost.
good gift.
What?
And it won't get lost.
You don't want
that
your
way.
piece of paper lost.
Right, we didn't, right. Anyway, back to this, the subcommittee that Vice Chair Tadoro Hargreaves is going to be working on, will be policies, and then I'm assuming she'll bring the drafts back, maybe one at a time, I don't know.
Right.
But we'll be adding to our policies, and if anybody, has anything that you
Right.
think is not going right, could be done better, then we can bring that to
Like
her.
I got some training ones that, from the feedback from our working session. How do things come to us? We had a meeting with some residents, and the question was, how do they bring items to us? Do they come to our meetings? Do they send us, what's the best way to get the information to us? And so I figured we could do a policy on that, a policy on, how people submit the complaints when we file up with them, follow up or previously meet with them. There were several things that I had, and one of them, and I was experimenting with Ms. Janess last night, is if we, right now, all information managers are on the city system, so we have the city office suite, but if we get all the commissioners on it, that's another way that we can share documents. So I drafted a document and I shared it with Ms. Janess, and she was able to open it and see it and go in there and work on it. So that can help us save things in a location. But until we get that fully up and running, I can understand the need for paper.
I think we need it even after it's up and running. What happens when the computer goes down?
That's true, yeah. And that
It
has
should be
happened.
backed up.
I mean, there's a place for paper.
Motion.
I'm sorry, there's a place for paper. So, it may be duplicative, but if I do something, I'm gonna hand it
Okay.
for
Can I just
for
say
the archive.
That I support all of those things about creating policies. We won't all be here forever, and one of the things that we've had lots of discussions about over the last, year and a half, 2 years, has been making sure that we put in place, when Commissioner Jackson was chair, we talked a lot about putting things in place that would be able to live past our involvement
Right.
with this
Yeah.
commission,
Right.
so that no people who come in have a starting spot and not starting over.
Starting-
So that's important.
Right.
Reinventing the wheel. And
Exactly.
so what I'm gonna be asking, if you are involved in something else outside of our meetings that involves the commission, put in archive, so people know, what's going on. And so, that's okay. That's
Yeah,
my,
that was actually how they got me to stay, because I was gonna hand them, I had all these.
Such a nerdy way, really.
I had all these policy things like on pieces of paper that I didn't have time to put together. So I offered it to them, and they're like, "Well, why don't you just stay
And do
write
it.
them?"
Put those together.
I
Right.
think it took 2 lunches and 4 hours.
to convince her.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
phone call.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
We need
So-
it, we need
So
it.
I think there's lots for everybody to take part in, for sure. And I think that
What? I've got this paper report.
okay, do you want to do your report
I
there?
think that's next, right?
Right, well, there's a thing on recruiting here. And,
The
and
report came next.
yes,
We
you're
put it
right.
in here.
Yes, you're right. You added it. Yes.
So I just want to, Francis had talked about a meeting that we had, and an issue came up that we didn't know, it sort of blindsided us. There was a group concerned about what had happened with regard to a young man who had been arrested, and he was arrested on a warrant, well, because of a traffic stop, but it was a traffic stop, and turns out he had a state police warrant out for him, and so he was taken into custody, and it turns out somehow it was apparently not our officers, but somehow ICE was contacted, and so this man is now being held on an ICE warrant. I don't know if he's still in Washtenaw County Jail. He's being held somewhere on a warrant from the Immigration Service. So the question was presented to us, well, isn't Ann Arbor a sanctuary city? And I guess the idea being that if the officers assumed, that he could be, or knew, I don't know how they would know, that he was somehow didn't have a totally legal status, they should have done something because we're a sanctuary city. So I said I would look up the issue. And I just did a little bit of research, and the whole issue of sanctuary cities came about when the former president wanted to step up immigration enforcement. And some areas decided that they were not going to cooperate with ICE. And so I asked our city attorney's office, and Attorney Janetsky helped us out. And so really what I've done is I copy almost word for word what the opinion was from the city attorney's office. But Ann Arbor is not a sanctuary city, never has been. We were what they call a welcoming city. And if anybody wants to know, so the ordinance prohibits the officers from soliciting information regarding immigration status, and prohibits soliciting information for the purpose of determining immigration status. They can't inquire into the immigration status of a person. All right, so that's basically what our ordinance says. So I am putting this into our archives, and if anyone, if the issue comes up again, because we were blindsided, we didn't know, and so if it comes up again, that is the answer, and for a serious look at the reasons and what the ordinance actually says, it'll be in the archives.
Fantastic.
Yeah, and for folks who are unfamiliar with, like if you're a non-citizen, you don't have, not even undocumented, but just a non-citizen, so you could be carrying a green card. You don't have to actually have a federal offense. It could be like a minor local offense, and you can be held indefinitely by ICE until your home country accepts your deportation. So that's why, so for Vietnamese Americans, Southeast Asians, a lot of Cambodians have been deported over the years and held like anywhere between 10 or like over 10 years until like the home country allowed folks to be deported back. And if you were like a refugee, as an infant here, and were caught with possession charges or driving a traffic offense, and ICE picks you up. It's not a major crime, a federal crime. It could be a minor offense, like shoplifting. There's a young Southeast Asian woman who was deported for shoplifting to feed her child, right? So it's totally unjust. And I want to blame Reagan, but I mean, it's been around for quite some time, and how ICE has been deployed to basically punish people in communities who are neighbors and like real productive community members who should be here if it wasn't for these policies. They have not been changed yet. They have not been changed.
And this young man had a wife and children here, apparently, who have a legal status. I'm not sure what it is. And this is not the end of his complaint. We really haven't, responded to the complaint. But this was an issue, that came up during the discussion.
So what the committee's done before, when parents were held by ICE during the Trump years, was rally at the immigration courts and protest, and sometimes the judges would either delay deportation proceedings or take some extenuating circumstances into account. Like I think one parent has a special needs child, and it's just like there's no way anyone can take care of this child if they're deported. So these cases are really complicated, and it pays for our community to pay really close attention. I think Dr. Bill Lopez at the sports school actually wrote a book about
Public
this.
policy.
Yes, public policy.
No, public health.
Public health. He wrote a book.
Separate something.
Yes.
Yes.
I think that's on our reading list.
Yes.
It's called
Yeah,
Separated.
Miss Jeanette
Yeah,
has a
but
copy
you
of
ordered
it.
it,
Yeah, I thought so.
Yeah. So it's devastating to hear that it's.
And I was going to say, and Washtenaw County has a long history of participating with ICE and cooperating with ICE. And that was the subject of all of his dissertation work.
Yeah.
And that was around it was around the presence of mixed status families. And so most families in Ann Arbor and Washtenaw County are mixed status, with some people having documentation and some not. Some being legal citizens born here and some not. And the cost that deportation has on those families, even to Mexico. And he cites very specific raids that happen here, in which Ann Arbor Police Department was a full participant in those. But it is also one of the reasons why we talk about the extents, the lengths to which people go to avoid attention from the police. Because those communities understand that they can be a passenger in a car who makes a turn without signaling and be deported. They are very unlikely to make police complaints. And I know Wicker, I'm sorry, obviously I was working when you guys met, but Wicker works with those folks. And so this is something that they do all the time. And they understand how law-abiding, how overly careful folks are to try to avoid the scrutiny of the police. But there's a long history of that here. And obviously, Bill is an expert on that, but Wicker does that all the time, and so they understand that as well. But there are implications for policing and for complaints. And it's a significant number of people in our community. I think sometimes they are viewed as invisible, but they are here, and will come up and talk at rallies all the time. I meet people who are never willing to come to these meetings. Because they do not want that scrutiny. They don't want to be on video. They aren't interested in doing that. And yet there are a significant number of people who are not being served, will never call the police. So.
And I think this is really important, because that's one of the issues we raised with the group, is if people don't want to identify themselves when they are going to place a complaint, they can use other means to do that. They can have a liaison. They can have somebody who speaks on their behalf to convey that without, unveiling their identity.
Right.
The other thing is also, as part of the recruiting, is we would like to have on this committee members of other segments of our community that they feel that they are discriminated against or their voices are not heard. Because if they are not at the table, they're not going to voice their viewpoints and their experiences. They would be marginalized, and we don't want that. We want them to be over here and to tell us and tell the audience, tell the citizens of this town that they are part of it. They are not just unknown numbers. They have a life, they exist, they contribute to the community, and they have to be acknowledged and respected for that.
Now, the other thing that came up in this complaint, and I think I heard Francis, as I was coming in, getting sort of a legal opinion, but if someone has, in this particular case, there was a group that was advocating on behalf of the person who had been arrested. And the issue was, what was the warrant for? And we cannot tell this other group what the warrant was for. So, without the permission of the person themselves. So there are a whole lot of issues that come to play in this case, and I'm sure it will in others, but, yeah.
Yeah, and that was another recent thing that came up, letting us know the need for procedures. Because it was literally in that meeting. I went into the meeting thinking that as a third-party complainant or as their advocate, they would have all the information. So I was a bit taken back when they didn't, and they were asking it from us. And I was like, ooh, I don't know about that. You know, I just didn't. And I said I felt uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So I think having an opinion in writing so that we know and then we can build procedures from it is a good thing for us to have.
And the one thing also I need to focus on is the fact that as information managers, we look at the cases, the complaints. We look at the supportive material, whether it's body-worn cameras, dashboard cameras, investigation, all these things, and we see if there is any kind of a deviation from the normal, the behavior, the interactions, all these things. And sometimes if you don't see any, you have a complaint and it's not supported by what you see. I'm not going to go and say, well, you know, I side with this, I side with that. I have to be objective, I have to be unbiased, I have to be transparent, because anyone can go and look at what I looked at and fault me if I was not careful in my viewing and reviewing of the complaint. There are certain times you feel that I think over here maybe we need change of policies. This is why it's important to have the log that
Right.
we are receiving from the police department. Is we can look at the complaints and say, you know what, 60% of the cases were rude interaction.
Yeah.
You know, you can say, you know, this is rude, or lack of respect, or, you know, I was being singled out, or was biased. Somebody was biased towards me. So, but we cannot do it right now.
Right.
We would like to have that.
And that's one of the, once we get
Right.
whatever this platform is, so that we can, and I know when I was reviewing them, there were a lot of complaints. Officer was rude to me.
Yep.
And if we can go to the department and say, look, 60% of our complaints, and hopefully we'll be able to have statistics like that we can pull up, are saying the officers are being rude, and maybe even have it to the point where, look, there's 2 or 3 officers that we keep getting complaints about rudeness, and then, you know, move a little further. So hopefully, we can get what we need sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
Thank you.
I agree.
And our recommendations are either they take recommendations, they change them, or they ignore them. It's not
Right.
like we have, again, it goes back to the council when the ordinance was created and passed. They absolutely trimmed the power of this commission. So we have no teeth, even we don't have false teeth. We have to have liquid diet. Sorry.
No, it's okay, I'm not offended. That was before us.
That was more good
Such
conversation.
a different council.
Yeah, absolutely. So, thank you. And I think if we move on to recruiting, to let you know that the Human Rights Commission, who has a very large database of emails, who was responsible for sending out the email to gather applications when we were first formed, has asked us for a paragraph of information, and they're going to send it out to help us recruit. So to get some new applications to fill our spaces. So I thought that was great. Chair Carter and I finished that today, and Ms. Janess is going to get that out to the Human Rights Commission so that email can go out. So that's pretty exciting.
And Cynthia and I are also trying to
Oh, yeah.
recruit folks.
Yeah.
too.
Good.
So,
How
yeah.
many slots do you have to fill?
Right now, we have 3. And then we will have a youth spot coming up also. So we'll need the youth spot can be university or high school. So, and that's a 1-year term. So that for recruiting persons, especially for high school, it's good for them to know they only have to do 1 year. But if they're a junior, they can re-up if they're interested. So,
So at least a junior in high school, or
you know,
a senior.
you can have an advanced sophomore, I think. I have a sophomore that could probably handle sitting here, but
Okay.
yeah.
You have somebody in mind?
No, I just
Oh.
wanted to know because I, you
Yep.
know,
Okay.
with the community.
And then I just have one more comment for subcommittees. Finance. I reviewed what we have in our budget still. The budget ends June 30th, and we still have $19,000 in training funds. And as much as I like Mr. Mahoney, I'd rather not give it all back to him. So, we were thinking maybe just to do some once-a-month training sessions, start in April. If commissioners can make it, great. If not, we can do it as a working session, but we can come up with some topics. We can contact NACOL, maybe we can get some videos that we can share and just have some group training. One of them, having a discussion today, came up, how many officers do we have? What is their policies for this? How do they compare with other departments in the state and per capita numbers and so on and so? How many do we have on patrol at various times? So one of the things was the idea of maybe just having a training with the chief or their community department and have them come in and just share information with us about those types of things, bringing that information up. But again, we can also have NACOL. I'm sure NACOL has videos that we can share and put up on a screen and do together. So,
And we do have, NACOL, this September will be in Chicago.
Yes.
So we have the funds to send the commissioners to NACOL, and it's good training. And so if you, put it on your calendar now and work around it
Do we
if
know
you
when
can
it
go.
is in
It's November.
November, I'm saying September, November.
I believe it's November. And, Chicago makes it interesting because remember, Chicago has their own police oversight that has a full portion of the Chicago Police Department's budget. And Chicago is definitely one of the best NACOL sessions I've ever been in because they were so represented. They had representatives of all 3 of the groups of that are in Chicago, their police oversight, their police board, and then their legal. And so that was a great, a really good session.
They're starting their People's Academy, their training academy right now. Actually, if you guys are interested in spending money, I will forward it to Denise.
Okay, and their conference is November 12th through the 16th in Chicago.
Oh, it's in November, not September.
I'm sorry, yes.
Oh, okay.
November.
Yep.
Through when? I'm sorry.
November 12th through the 16th.
And then in reference to the budget, you were saying that it ends in June. I guess I'm confused on what that means.
We'll get new
So
money.
right.
So you either have to use it or
For the
lose
year.
it.
Right.
Okay.
But it
Right,
would be
so
new budget
July
for next
1,
year.
July 1, we would go back up. I believe our regular number is 28. 28,000?
Yeah, because we spent 8
Right.
or something in NACOL.
Yeah. So that's what we usually get for the full year.
Okay.
City council has we're in budgeting season now, so all the departments have presented their wish lists. That's probably a good way to describe it.
Yeah.
And then we debate, we work with the city administrator and he kind of whittles down what his priorities he would like to see the budget, what the budget he would look like if he didn't have us. So, and then city council kind of, we have our own wish list, our own hopes and dreams for the city, and then it's this whole process, and then we vote for it in June.
So don't let them cut us because we didn't use our
Right.
money
I mean,
this year.
we had to hear it. Yeah.
I know that'll come up. They didn't use
Yeah,
it, but,
so why do they need it?
right,
Exactly.
right. Tell them we're gonna use it this year.
Okay. Can I recommend a conference? So Ann Arbor is nominated for, we're in the runnings for a Strong Towns Award. And there's a conference in North Carolina, May 31st. And the organization, it's Strong Towns National. It's a May 30th through 31st. It really focuses on urban planning and design. But they do talk about safety and like how streets are designed, and if we talk about like pedestrian safety. It's a super nerdy conference, but we might be like one of the winners for this like Strong Town Awards. Yeah. Like urban planners get really excited about this. We're in the 16. They're doing like a Sweet 16 now, so like folks can vote for Ann Arbor. We're up against a city in Massachusetts, so let's like hold strong for the Midwest and vote for Ann Arbor to win this, and then you'll get presented a trophy or something at this conference. But it's also a nice chance to go to North Carolina. There's a lot of progressive work being done in North Carolina right now. I can't remember where it's going to be.
Oh, I
Is
know.
it Asheville?
I
No,
think-
it's Charlotte, North Carolina.
yeah.
Yeah, and it would be an interesting opportunity to meet with folks who are just trying to
I don't wanna go.
do progressive action on the municipal level, like pushing community leaders to think about public safety, public land use, reform, zoning.
I did my graduate studies in Charlotte, North Carolina, so they have come so far in a relatively short amount of time. When I graduated and left Charlotte, there was very little mass transit, and within 10 years, they had a rail system. So they're extremely, and when it comes to urban planning, I definitely got a really, really good education working there because they did a lot in a very short amount of time. So, that's it. Does anybody have anything else that they'd like to add or
We have our
comment?
council reports, right?
You want?
You can
No.
give it.
Oh, I have
Yeah.
a quick council thing. So, it's not directly police related, but it is community related because when we talk about like how folks get come into the justice system, Cynthia and I have been working on trying to address this eviction crisis that's looming here in the county. And Cynthia spoke really well to this at the last city council meeting, and how once you come into the eviction process, it's no turning back. What was the stat that you had cited, Cynthia?
Well, I think I talked about the percentage of individuals in the county that are being. I think I said 60% of minorities were affected, and we only have 12% in the county. I did talk about how once, well, first of all, an eviction on your record. I mean, just like let's just talk about that. But like when you also when you've been evicted, it's a higher chance that you'll come in contact with the criminal legal system, and it just becomes a vicious cycle from there. I think I talked about mental illness currently, the spike in individuals that are homeless. That I think it's up by it's like ridiculous, like 300%. It's like
300%.
substance use disease. Yeah.
So all of our shelters are at max capacity.
It's a
Alpha
crisis.
Housing is our only family shelter, and that only houses 6 families at a time, which I don't think folks really realize in Washington County. That's the entire county, the only family. And then Delonis is at max capacity. When we had the ice storms, it was, I think, residents who have homes were like suddenly finding out, like, what does it mean to suddenly try to struggle to find housing with power and heat, right? So right now we have 159 children, 102 adults, so there are basically 95 families who are being housed in local hotels. And funding through the county which is the new Human Services Partnership. It's a coordinated funding of the city of Ann Arbor and the county are the only ones funding social service agencies with public monies. Everything else is through like United Way or the Ann Arbor Area Community Foundation. That's private philanthropy, but you know, Ypsi Township, Pittsfield, Superior Township, other municipalities are not putting their revenue, their budget, their property taxes revenue towards helping social services. It's really just Ann Arbor and then the money that the county gets. So there's money that's running out. We had eviction relief, federal eviction relief funding up until through September of this year. But the HAWK crisis line, the homeless crisis line that we have in the county has been in total disarray since June. Back in June, we had over 2,000 calls that were unanswered. And that's the line where folks call in. We're supposed to get back to them within 24 hours with resources and assessments, like pretty shortly after. We've had families live in their cars for 6 weeks at a time.
And 76% of these families are Black female-led households.
Yes. So
Single
we've been
mothers.
walking over this cliff for a long time now. So applications for SARA eviction relief funding ended in June. The HAWK intake line like fell apart, and then the county staff had decided to take on the calls themselves. And then they've been using temp staff to take this on. That's like an impossible task, and it hasn't been working well. So yesterday, Washtenaw Housing Alliance, Avalon Housing, and some other housing advocates went to the hotels themselves and did assessments, which is basically social workers sitting down with families saying, like, what do you need now? Where's your extended family? Can we figure out a way for you to find housing? Because after April 1st, this funding ends. The funding for the hotel vouchers ends. And there was no plan afterwards. The only plan we could come up with was like me and Cynthia, Chris Watson, just basically badgering the county incessantly over and over again, saying this is an emergency. We cannot have 159 children on the streets April 2nd, right? And we're supposed to be working on racial equity in this county, and the majority of them are Black children. So we got to get this going. So at the last city council meeting, not this past Monday, we voted to reappropriate about $300,000 that we had given towards new human service partnerships. That was supposed to go to like a big grant, big idea grant effort, and wasn't spent this past fiscal year. So we're like, the big idea is that we're not going to have children on the streets. So we rebudgeted that money, and then our city administrator is moving his money as fast as possible. The only thing is this money has to stay within Ann Arbor. This is the Ann Arbor public money, stays in Ann Arbor. And it's why, you know, our city administrator has, and then the county administrator has gone to other municipalities and said, we need your city government to consider giving to these social services. Like we all benefit from making sure folks are safe in this county. And I wish we could extend this funding across Ann Arbor lines, but legal was just like, no. Also, it's just not fiscally responsible if we but it's just a note that, you know, if you live in the townships, talk to your township supervisor, talk to your county commissioner and say, like, I would like additional funding to go towards this effort so that we have long-term planning on housing our homeless families, and then also talking to schools, because schools, there's a federal mandate to provide transportation for homeless families. We are providing transportation for Ann Arbor public school families coming in from Belleville, because that's the only housing that's affordable to them, but their children are coming to Ann Arbor public schools. So when we talk about the housing crisis, or when we, like this past Monday, we voted on like zoning kind of, I guess, overrides, so that we can allow bigger buildings, taller buildings. Like, please know that when we talk about zoning and the housing crisis and these tall, shiny buildings, it's so that we can bring in more supply and folks not competing against older housing stock, because it's the only thing that they can buy in town. We need more options for folks, because if we don't build, we don't allow other folks, if we don't allow building to happen in Ann Arbor, then the people we care about that we don't want traffic stuff
That's
for,
exactly.
you know?
Are gonna have to drive here.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, and they can't live here. And the only folks living here are the ones who are, they could live anywhere. So we have to have, if we want it more diverse, more just
And
community,
also, you know,
we show up.
the parents that are driving in are away from their children longer. They're away. Their children are either maybe at home by themselves, or they're with someone. They're away from them longer. That creates trauma for the children.
So the county is looking at reallocating money from their general reserves for this crisis, and it looks like they're making headway so the county commissioners can vote on this pretty soon. We were kind of bummed that they didn't vote on it last week, but if you know your county commissioner, please email and call them and say we cannot have this continue. Like, we've known this would happen since June, but we really haven't had, I mean, Bonnie, you can speak to this.
Yeah.
We've been fighting for every
I
dollar
live
for
in this world every
agencies.
day
Yeah.
of those kind of calls and those kind of situations, and the fact is, you know, educating people that there's only really one place for families besides domestic violence safe house. One place, one shelter for families, you know, and so we're always hearing about people living in their cars, and you talk about 159 people in young people in hotels. There's at least triple or double that amount, more than that, of kids who are living in situations with other relatives and are homeless but not counted because they're not in the hotel and families.
Right.
So
Yeah, Ann Arbor's not okay. So if we can just provide basic services like housing, food security, then, you know, hopefully we can keep folks safe and not outside of the justice system. So yes, please harass your county commissioners, because we harass them
Yes.
all the
Yes.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
So it's 7:54. If we're all set, if we can get a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second,
second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Excellent. Thank you for a
Thank you.
great meeting.